You're watching Access Minnesota. Here's Jim du Bois.
New media, and I'm thinking social media, online media, have really helped to drive the 24-hour news cycle. It used to be that CNN was the only 24-hour news source. Now we know that it's a 24-hour-a-day job, whether you're a traditional broadcast network, a traditional television station affiliate, a traditional newspaper. Are there dangers with that? Are we losing perhaps in the desire to be first? Are we losing accuracy? We've seen cases like this. For example, the Supreme Court decision on the Obama administration's health care plan. Some of the initial reports got the court's decision completely wrong. We also saw that during the reporting of Hurricane Sandy. Some news agencies were relying on tweets from the affected area and not second sourcing them or third sourcing them and putting wrong information on the air. Is this a danger that we're driven to be first and fast and we're perhaps losing accuracy in the process?
Definitely. And I think that what's interesting, though, just even the last couple of days with the shooting in Connecticut, you had a lot of erroneous information that circulated on social media and online about the identity of the shooter for quite some time before it was corrected and fixed. And the irony, though, in that situation was that it was actually the mainstream media that had it wrong. And so then a lot of the stuff that was circulating on Twitter was primarily because CNN and other places had it wrong first. And so I think there is a bit of a misnomer, this idea that social media inherently is less reliable or less trustworthy than information you might get from the mainstream media just by default, especially with a very kind of fluid breaking news kind of situation. But also what you're seeing is that social and these types of media are also emerging as platforms where information can be verified out in the open. So whereas previously we relied on traditional institutions to get it right and then report it to us, you're seeing more and more with the people like Andy Carvin and others on Twitter, they're willing to put out information and say, I'm not quite sure if this is true yet. Can anybody help me verify this? And you're seeing the social media being used for that kind of function, that kind of real-time crowdsourced verification.
What are some of the essential tools and skills that a journalist must have to succeed today?
Well, in some ways, as much as I've just talked about change, there are some very traditional kinds of things that don't change all that much. And I would say that the ability to tell a compelling story, and in whatever format, whatever platform that may be, is still going to be very relevant. And in many cases, I would argue, and I tell this to my students, that the ability to communicate effectively has never been more essential and important. More and more of what we do in our human communications are mediated. They are written out. They are somehow conveyed through media. And so the ability to recognize how the particular affordances of technology can be combined with particular forms of storytelling and other kinds of techniques, that becomes a very powerful skill set, whether you're in journalism or outside journalism. I would argue actually that one of the more compelling and interesting things in the future will be journalists who can actually take a lot of information and simply distill it and make sense of it for people and to simplify their lives. And of course, journalists have done that for a long time. They've acted as filters for news, but to do that in a different kind of way. I think that nowadays we are all overwhelmed with information. We want people who can help us to make sense of it and to analyze it and to do a job for us by saving us time, but yet giving us that very crucial information we need to know.
Seth Lewis is an assistant professor in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Minnesota. Professor Lewis, thanks so much for joining us on Access Minnesota.
It's been great. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Access Minnesota will return after these messages.